2023 wasn't a good year for the Carolina Panthers, but I'm trying to make 2024 a better one for myself. Get started on your resolutions with Factor so you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including keto options, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. Skip that overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door, and they're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. Head to factormeals.com/C350 and use the promo code C350 to get 50% off. That's code C350 at factormeals.com/C350 to get 50% off.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. You could turn $10 into $250. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/fan and use code FAN. That's code FAN at prizepicks.com/fan.
Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
In a world where Carolina Panthers fans have an insatiable thirst for Panthers news and opinions, only one podcast roars ferociously. It's the C3 Panthers Podcast.
What's up, Panther fans? Bringing you a special bonus episode. Maybe we'll try to do this weekly. Maybe call it something like the Beat Report. But this week, I caught up with Greg Auman from The Athletic to talk about this matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in London. Thanks for joining the podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Check us out on Tuesdays, live, 9 p.m., the C3 Panthers podcast. Let's get into it. I'd like to welcome Greg Auman, beat writer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for The Athletic. I'm a subscriber to The Athletic. Guys, if you want to fall in love with the sports page again, it's time to go and subscribe to The Athletic. Greg, thanks for joining the C3 Panthers podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Hope you guys are doing well.
Yeah, man, teams are getting ready to travel. I know that you have preparations to leave tomorrow. Just tell me a little bit, has this your first experience going to London for a football game?
This is very excited. First time going to London, period. So yeah, very excited, and it's a little bit of a shorter week for the Bucs. Panthers are going about a day ahead of the Bucs, but very excited. It should be a fun week.
I heard a crazy rumor. I don't know. I haven't followed it up, but teams that leave first have a winning record in London.
Yeah, don't tell Bruce Arians that, because like 2 years ago he went with Arizona and he went early. He went on Monday, and that's flying from Phoenix, so it's 3 more hours than what he's doing now. But he went on Monday. The Rams came on Friday, and the Rams beat him 33-0, broke Carson Palmer's arm, and sent him into retirement. So he's leaving. He's leaving on Thursday. So
he's leaving on Thursday, not on a Monday. That's for sure. All right. So the Buccaneers are 2-3. New coaching staff. A lot. Kind of hard to expect going into this season, or figure out what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to be. And it's been up and down, and I think maybe we were misled a little bit by the Rams' victory my question is have Tampa Bay fans, did they get overly exuberant after the LA game, and then how was last week's game against the Saints? What does it just tell you about the team?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably not as good as they were in Los Angeles, and probably not as bad, at least defensively, as they were in New Orleans. Bucs beat to be the team that was in the Super Bowl early in the year is an exciting thing. Bucs did it last year with the Eagles. We're 2-0 and finished 5-11. So again, no one individual win is going to carry too much weight. Exciting that they won in Los Angeles, encouraging in terms of the team taking a step forward. But at the same time, a week later, they go to New Orleans, and Teddy Bridgewater's throwing the ball up and down the field, and they're struggling offensively. And it's a 7-point loss on the final scoreboard, but it probably wasn't that close if you were there in the Superdome.
Kind of got, some tough calls. I've heard Bucs fans talking about the Michael Thomas pass interference as well as Bruce Arians having trouble with the challenge. But you talked about the defense not being as bad as they were in that game. If I'm right, I think they're last in the league in passing defense. Allowed average of 323 yards a game, which is a lot. What is going on with that secondary?
Yeah, it's a young secondary. It's like their starting five right now would be 2 rookies, 2 second-year players, and a fourth-year player in Werner Hargreaves. They're just super young, still very much learning a new defense that Todd Bowles has brought in. So you're finding seams, and you're finding communications errors and tackling errors. And again, Michael Thomas, they knew who Michael Thomas was. He had 16 catches against them last year in the same game, and he had 11 catches on 13 targets, went for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, pretty much did whatever he wanted. So that tells you maybe they still have a long way to go. But again, they're getting the quarterback better than they have in years past. Shaq Barrett is leading the NFL in sacks. They went into Sunday's game second in the NFL in turnovers, in takeaways, I should say. So they're doing that much better than they have. But again, there's other areas where they really haven't taken a big step forward from what was a really bad defense last year.
How is the personnel for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on defense with fitting Todd Bowles' 3-4 scheme? The Panthers similarly are moving from a 4-3 to a 3-4, but we made a bunch of moves in the offseason and in the draft, I felt, to really aggressively go after the change. How has Tampa Bay adjusted to that transition?
Yeah, fairly well. Vita Vea is certainly a big enough D tackle to anchor the middle of a defensive line. They brought in Ndamukong Suh kind of to replace Gerald McCoy as somebody who might be a more natural fit in a 3-4. 2 strong middle linebackers in Levante David and the rookie Devin White. Every 3-4 is different. This one has a lot of different looks, wants to have some misdirection, and it's kind of easy to confuse yourself sometimes too. So I think it's, right now you want to think they're 5 games in, they should know what they're doing, but I think there'll be a much better defense that kind of looks like it knows what it's doing in the second half of this season.
It's Devin White, the linebacker, correct?
Yeah.
He's been hurt. He was hurt, I think, in the first game or early. Maybe it was the Panthers game. Word is that he's going to return in this game.
Yeah, he'll be back. He did get hurt real early on in that Panthers game, in the second game of the season for the Bucs. Hasn't played since. There had been some thought he would go in the Saints game. Dressed, was active, and they just decided to give another week, kind of let that knee heal up. But no, there's every intention for him to start, and I would think if he's starting at linebacker, he's probably not coming off the field. So he'll be a big part of trying to contain Christian McCaffrey, as well as they did the first game, and just trying to keep an offense in check.
How were they able to do that, in your opinion, in the game against Carolina? While we saw Carolina threw the ball, it seemed like a million times with a Cam Newton who was playing on one foot and or one leg. How though were they able to completely negate Christian McCaffrey? Because you think Jacksonville would have tried to do the same thing. Yet this past week they had one thing to do and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, McCaffrey, I think, went for 176 against the Jags. Had gone over 150 in both games against the Bucs last year in terms of total yards. And yeah, they have a stout run defense. Part of that is that they have so much trouble through the air. But they had the number 2 NFL run defense, or number 1 in yards per carry. I think it's been 6 years since any team gave up as few yards per carry as they are right now. So that's where it starts. McCaffrey obviously is a pass catcher as much as he is a running back in terms of running the ball. So they need their linebackers to play at a really high level. Carolina was a little bit disjointed. I think they were probably a better offense with what Kyle Allen's doing right now than they were, like you said, with a one-legged Cam Newton, who's probably not a threat to run. They struggled in some short yardage situations in that game. Defensively, the Bucs played very well in that game, especially to make a play on 4th down and 1 and kind of close out the game the way they did.
You're listening to Greg Auman with The Athletic on the C3 Panthers podcast. We'll be right back after this. 5 weeks of the regular season in the books, and so much is left to be decided. Still plenty of time to get in on the action with MyBookie. How about this prop? McCaffrey to score the game's first TD? It paid out over 3-1 against Jacksonville. Division odds, season awards, and in-game wagering available too. The Panthers head to London in Week 6, where they're currently 2.5-point favorites versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With a game total of 48, there will be tons of live betting options throughout Sunday's crucial division matchup in London. And that just scratches the surface. We've teamed up with MyBookie this October to give you this great offer. Sign up at mybookie.ag and use promo code OVERTIME, and they will match your first deposit. Again, promo code OVERTIME, and new users get their first deposit doubled. MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. What are your thoughts on Bruce Arians, right? He's got a lot of tenure, tenured coach coming in. There's been this carousel of coaches for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you feel that his experience in having Todd Bowles there is kind of changed the temperament a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think there's an optimism. This is my 7th season full-time on the beat. This is my 4th coach. So they've gone through a lot. Arians is 67, older, but has won. I mean, basically what he's trying to do here is exactly what he did in Arizona, taking over a team that was 5-11. Getting 10 wins his first year, getting the playoffs his second and third year. Has a good staff around him. We mentioned Todd Bowles. He's got Byron Leftwich, his offensive coordinator. So it's just a matter of how quickly it takes. I think he's very confident about being able to do it in a hurry. The second half, like I said, the second half of the season is probably a little bit easier schedule-wise. They've had a tough first 5 games. Even the games you thought would be easy, like San Francisco, now look to be a lot tougher when you look at who they are. So I think the path to the end of the season will get a little bit easier. It's just a matter of how quickly they can start winning the close games that they've lost in recent years. I think they'll be better than 5-11. It's just a matter of whether it's slightly better and 7-9, or whether they can actually put themselves in position to compete for a playoff spot in December.
How are the players responding to Arians' tough talk, right? As we saw this past week after the Saints game, he said that our secondary or corners are soft. He goes out and he says O.J. Howard isn't getting open, and today he released a play. I mean, and I don't know if that's really a big deal, the release of a player. But how are the players responding to Arians' style of coaching?
I think they like it. I mean, I think it takes some getting used to. I mean, I think he'll call people out publicly, like you said. I think he's somebody who's but I think they respect that he's honest with them. He's very close to them as a coach in the locker room, in practice. I think they know he cares about them. He's going to tell you how it is if you're not doing something right.
And that doesn't exclude himself. After the 2 timeout call, he came up and said that he didn't, that was on him right there. He didn't try to push the bill in any other way there. Now let's turn our attention to the offense here. Jameis Winston, last year of he's in his 5th year option, correct?
Yes, that's right.
All right. What is the feeling about Jameis Winston going forward? Is the idea that Bruce Arians is not here to rebuild a team in the future and to coach a young quarterback, and Jameis Winston is the solution going forward, or do you think it's still unanswered?
No, I think they're still deciding that. I mean, I think he's, it's 5 games here. I think he's played 4 very good games. His passer rating's been over 100. I think he has 10 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the last 4 games. But, you go back to the opener, he had 3 interceptions against San Francisco, had 2 of them returned for touchdowns, was a big part of why they didn't win that game. And the picks weren't all his fault at the same time, but there's still that inconsistency. I think the limiting factor for his success since he's been in the league has been trouble with turnovers, too many interceptions, too many fumbles. I think he's been a playmaker. I mean, he's had 2 4,000-yard seasons. He's on pace to break his own records for touchdowns and yards this year. But for him to kind of take that next step, be seen as an above-average NFL quarterback, the kind of guy you want to give a big contract to stay in town, he's got to cut down on his mistakes. And he probably has to get the team to win more consistently than they have so far.
Yeah, it's consistency seems to be the story that Jameis Winston needs to figure out. Now, the offensive line has suffered some injuries in the past week, starting 2 rookies. Can you tell us a little bit about what the offensive line situation is right now?
Yeah, it's not 2 rookies. It's 2 veteran guys. They're both 28 years old, but 2 guys that are backups and wouldn't be starting under normal circumstances. Their right guard, Alex Kappa, broke his arm during Sunday's game, actually played about 2.5 quarters with a broken arm.
Jeez.
And then their right tackle, who's an older guy, DeMar Dotson, he's 33, He's got a hamstring injury where he's probably out as well. So they'll have backups at both of those spots. The right side of the line is going to be a big question mark. The Earl Watford, who was with Arians in Arizona, started 20 games in 15 and 16 with Arians out there, but hasn't really been a starter for the last 2 years. Is more on the roster for versatility than anything else. The right tackle is a guy named Josh Wells, who they literally got off the street in September, got cut by the Jaguars, and that's their swing tackle. That's their backup at tackle. So it's a little bit of uncertainty there. I think they probably have to adjust the offense to get the ball out of Winston's hands faster, avoid the potential for that right side to bury their quarterback on Sunday.
I've drafted Mike Evans and O.J. Howard in my fantasy football leagues. I kept O.J. Howard in a keeper league, and he killed it last year. He has been missing in action this year. Is it him? Is it the system? And also, why is Mike Evans sometimes the best receiver in the league and sometimes not?
Yeah, I mean, O.J. Howard fantasy owners are not happy people for the most part right now. And I think Bucs fans in general, whether it's fantasy football or not, would like to see him used more. I think going into the season, we knew that Arians really hadn't used the tight end a whole lot in his offense over time, and that really hasn't changed. I mean, O.J. Howard has probably been a blocker more than he's been a receiver. He and Cameron Brate, Cameron Brate has 20 touchdowns in the last 3 years. They're really not the featured parts that people thought they would be. They both have about 10 catches, 120 yards. Brate has 1 touchdown. O.J. has none. So, no, I think it's something where they're still working that out. Byron Leftwich is still getting a feel for the talent he has. And right now, it's just, for whatever reason, Winston hasn't thrown to the tight ends very much. That could change. On Sunday, they could be doing their best Greg Olsen impersonation and running up and down the field. But so far, it's been very quiet. Probably more important to this offense as run blockers for Howard than as pass catchers.
Byron Leftwich was a Marshall's quarterback, I believe. I remember he played I'm an ECU alumni, East Carolina University, and we played them in a bowl game where he broke his ankle or something, and the lineman had to carry him from down to down, and he led this tremendous comeback. So I've always admired Byron Leftwich, even though he had a wind-up that was insane as a quarterback. What do you think of him as a play caller?
It's pretty sharp. I mean, he's not even 40 yet, so he's one of the younger guys calling plays. I think it helps Winston to have somebody who's been a quarterback in this offense, who's been an assistant in this offense, kind of knows it very well and can relate to what quarterbacks have to try and do on the field. Right now, like you said, it's been mixed results. He's got 3 pick sixes, which is more than anybody in the NFL. But since if you start in week 2, he's got as many touchdowns as anybody in the league. So you've seen the good and the bad of it. I think they're still filling each other out. He's scrambling less this year, which probably means less fumbles, which is a good thing. Probably keeps him healthy better than he has in the last couple of years because he's had injuries in each of the last 2 seasons. But no, I think they work together well. I think they're both kind of an extension of Bruce Arians in terms of what he wants and how he likes offenses to move the ball. And I think that's just going to continue as they get to know each other better as this year goes on.
Last couple of questions we get you out of here. Everybody wants to know, look, is there's mixed bag? Everybody we ask about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, about Gerald McCoy, there is a mixed result of answers, whether sometimes he's beloved, sometimes people are on the fence. What have we got in Gerald McCoy at this point in his career, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely a more divisive player now even than he was when he was there. I mean, I think the main thing that works against Gerald is that he was here for 9 years and never made the playoffs, never was able to elevate this team to be a postseason team. And that's not necessarily his fault. Any one player is hard to rise up when you've struggled as much as the Buccaneers had. And they'd struggled before Gerald got here. They may continue to struggle after he's gone here. But 6 Pro Bowls is a lot. Gerald was a great guy in the community here. He's the Bucs Man of the Year this past year. A fun guy to deal with, loves superheroes, will defend Batman against Superman, Spider-Man, anybody you want to throw at him. So no, it's something where he's been kind of vilified a little bit here. Didn't really get treated right on the way out. I think if they had known they were moving on from him, they probably could have handled it a little bit better than they did. So there was this awkward limbo all spring where he wasn't necessarily there and they weren't. I think they had hoped to be able to trade him and get something for him before finally realizing they just had to cut him outright. So it's not really the way you want to treat the most decorated player on your roster. They cut him, and then a day later, they're signing Ndamukong Suh to take his spot. They're also giving Suh his number 93 jersey. I don't think that sat well with Gerald. So, like I said, there's a little bit.
Do you think he's been overly sensitive to that? Because I don't. I mean, we're all here rooting for him. We love him already. He's fitting right in. But I've talked to some other people, and that for Tampa Bay fans, they think he's being overly sensitive to this.
Yeah, I would tell you that Gerald is probably in a little bit of a gray area where he's not quite to the level. There's only 3 retired jerseys here. Leroy Selman, Warren Sapp, and Derek Brooks, and they're all in the Hall of Fame. I think Gerald knows he's not as good as those 3, but I think he probably is correct to put himself kind of in that next tier. There's guys like John Lynch and Rondé Barber and Mike Allstott whose jerseys aren't retired here, but they're generally seen as off limits. Nobody gets to wear them. I think he would have liked that to be the case for 93. So to have that not only not be the case, but then immediately let the guy who was drafted directly in front of you back in 2010 have your number, like as soon as you're gone, before you're out the door. I can see why that didn't sit well with him. I think he made some comments publicly that people didn't like in terms of what he thinks of himself and how he fits in among the greats in this franchise's history. But if you know Gerald, he's generally a humble person. He's somebody who has done a lot for this team, for this city. I think once all that settles, he'll end up being somebody here who was very much beloved here, even if he didn't get his team to the level of success on the scoreboard that you really would like to see him do.
Chris Godwin is stepping in, really stepping into his own here. He's only 23 years old, I believe. You guys are paying him absolutely nothing. How did you guys get this guy? How did you find him, develop him as a team, and how good can he be?
Yeah, I mean, he's having a great start. It's kind of been a pretty consistent ascent for him since his rookie year. Just a third-round pick out of Penn State. He's only in his 3rd year. So like you said, still kind of cheap on a rookie contract. Right now, I mean, he's on a pace for 19 touchdowns. If he keeps the pace he's at, that's only happened twice in NFL history. I mean, one of them was something of a garbage touchdown Sunday at the end there against the Saints. They're down 2 touchdowns. He scored with a minute left. But the other 5 have been all very big-time helpful touchdowns. He's somebody who probably benefits from the coverage that Mike Evans is getting from other defenses. But he makes plays. Very consistent, good hands, good route runner, keeps his legs moving once he catches the ball. And like I said, you've seen him go from, barely playing in the first half of his rookie year to outperforming Deshaun Jackson last year in his 2nd year. And now he's a strong, Mike Evans is definitely the number 1 here, but he's as strong a number 2 as you're going to find in most places in the NFL. And, again, they'll have some tough decisions to make. They can extend him after this year. But it's hard to pay 2 receivers the kind of money that he'll command when they're already giving Mike Evans $16 million a year. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
All right, last question. What's your biggest surprise? One positive, one well, I guess surprise in a good way and disappointment, or surprise in a bad way for this team so far?
I mean, the big surprise has to be Shaq Barrett. I mean, here's a guy that, had 14 sacks in 5 years in Denver. We stuck by some really good pass rushers in Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, Bradley Chubb. But for him to have, 9 sacks in the first 5 games, he's just and huge sacks. I mean, 3 of them are forced fumbles. He's had the first career interception to kind of clinch the Rams game. He's been huge. And he's a great kid, very humble. This is a guy that was a walk-on in college and, had to work and fight through the practice squad just to stick on an NFL roster. So it's the kind of guy that you like to see the success come to. He's been a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I'd like to just say this, is that one of the stats that stuck out for Panther fans is that Christian McCaffrey has more offensive yards than the New York Jets. Shaq Barrett has more sacks than Denver, Miami. The list goes to Atlanta, Cincinnati, the New York Jets, and he's tied with Oakland, Washington, Baltimore, and Detroit for sacks this season. That's crazy.
Yeah, if he gets, I think if he gets 1 sack Sunday in London, he'll have 10, and no one's had 10 in their first 6 games in 10 years. He's at an all-time record type pace. It's hard to keep up, but if he can, I mean, again, he's came in on a 1-year, $4 million contract, so he's going to be making a lot of money next spring if he can do anything close to what he's doing at this point.
All right, and the disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment. So far it's hard to point to something. I'd probably say O.J. Howard. I mean, just because, like you said, I think a lot of people had high hopes for him. A guy whose only real limitations his first 2 years were getting hurt. Missed the last 6 games last year, but consistently, got open, got in the end zone, was a fantasy darling, and still could be absolutely that guy. It's just for whatever reason his first month with Arians and with Leftwich has been more a blocking guy and a low key out of the end zone, out of the offense's plan. So no, he'd probably be the most surprising disappointment in terms of what he's been able to do.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, Greg. I know you're flying out of the country tomorrow. You have a safe trip. You're listening to Greg Auman from The Athletic. You can follow Greg at Greg Auman, AUMAN, all one, just one Twitter tag. Greg, thanks so much for being generous with your time tonight.
Oh, no problem. Thanks again. Y'all have a good night. Good luck on Sunday.
Thank you. Good night. Subscribe to the C3 Carolina Panthers podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or anywhere you can catch an RSS feed. Check out CarolinaCatChronicles.com for the latest Panthers news and opinions from the fan perspective.
Great cash, homie.